Thank you, Michel. That was really, really interesting, and wow, what a very complex situation. But when you were talking, I had a question. Speaks to that idea of patriotism. You said that you want to appeal to the leader's sense of patriotism for them to come forward to engage in these leadership exercises. And it made me start thinking about the Congo. I mean, I've never been there. I'm a specialist in West Africa, but I know that it's an enormous country. It has hundreds of ethnic groups. By some counts, it has between 200 and 400 languages, depending on how you separate them. And in a failed state like that, a dysfunctional state, people must be finding their sense of identity and their sense of security and their sense of meaning through different structures, not the state. I mean, whether it's clan or village or town or ethnic group or religious group. And I'm just wondering, how do you take that sense of allegiance that people have to something that actually works on a day-to-day basis or gives them some sort of security? And how do you transfer that to these leaders? Because it seems to me it's all well and good for them to be showing that they're more responsible, but people have to make a huge step, it seems to me, to actually be able to trust them after all that time. So how does their exercise at becoming, better leaders, how is that disseminated to people on the ground?
Thank you very much, Lee. In fact, there's something, there's a kind of enigma that comes to mind when we talk about Congo. It's the desire for national unity. I have witnessed it more at the bottom level, at the grassroots level, than at top level. Top level, yeah, in rhetoric terms, but when really Congo faced its biggest crisis in 1998, the call for national unity or the expression of frustration came more from grassroots level. I mean, maybe just a small anecdote. It started in August '98. I used a pretext, if I can say, of an outbreak of hemorrhagic fever that was taking place in a rebel-held area in northeastern DRC, to ask President Laurent Désiré Kabila, indirectly through his Minister of Health, if I could be allowed to fly from Kinshasa to that area via Goma, where the rebels were having their headquarters. Not for the sake of going there, but to bring alongside with me the best Congolese experts in hemorrhagic fever, in Marburg, kind of Ebola hemorrhagic fever. He probably liked the notion of patriotism and the fact that it was we were making a good use of patriotic notions, like let's use our Congolese expertise. And he said, okay, the same happened on the other side. I don't think it really came from the elite, apart from Laurent Désiré, the head of state. It was up to him to say yes or no, but on the other side, at the RCD level, on the rebel-held areas, I think they had to listen to the voices from the grassroots level who were saying, yes, we are still linked to Kinshasa. We need that. So we flew, we made the first flight between Kinshasa and rebel-held area, and the day after we were there, Kinshasa bombed Goma with another plane, of course. They threw a bomb over Goma, and it was said on BBC and VOA. And I heard that on the radio by a Congolese miner, where in the site where I was listening to that on the radio, and I heard him saying to the others, "Good, it's good that Kinshasa bombed the rebels, and it should bomb us as well, so that we can be liberated." I think it was really coming from the heart, and I saw that as an expression of a desire to keep that country that had been built by someone called Leopold still together, even if it was a legacy of a colonial past. they wanted it to be together. So I think this is what keeps them together, and it's a kind of an enormous challenge, and it's up to the leadership to rise up to that challenge. It's as if the people were telling them, we don't particularly like each other between Bakongo and the Kivu, but we want to remain the big Congo that we are proud of. We want to leave that to our kids. So it's a big challenge, but I'm still convinced that it's only by appeasing their feeling of insecurity through decentralization, for example, that those things will happen. The decentralization of power to local instances. So far it's not possible because the central state feels insecure, will never surrender power to to the other side of the country.
Susan? Then from the Hello School.
Thank you very much, Michel, for taking us to the practical. Sometimes, if you look at the problems of any secure state like the DRC, you can become very discouraged and do nothing. But I think what you're saying to us is to start with steps and build a foundation. I have a very nitty-gritty practical question. You've used some simulation tools, and you feel that they have great promise, even if you don't yet get the top leaders to participate. But I'm wondering how you get the middle leaders to participate in something that could be perceived as insubstantial fun and games. I've worked with Chinese on simulations, and it's very hard to get them to do it. Though they can have a transformative effect. How do you get these men you show to play these games? Thank you.
Many thanks for your question. I think there's only one word to answer. I know you're not used to see me answering with only one word, but it's ownership. You know, these games have been invented elsewhere, but the minute they experience it, they go through it, they realize that it's, you know, besides that, in Congo, theater plays and the use of theater plays and comedies is widespread and very much used, for example, for fight against HIV, prevention of a number of things, mosquito nets. They use, or even advertisement, commercial advertisements, they use more and more those theater plays and comedies and simulations. So it's kind of almost natural. The problem could come from, for example, I'm here in a university, maybe professors of university would say, not me. But actually, when I think they realize that they have missed a new step of education, a new form of pedagogy that is, I'm sure, widespread extensively used here. But because the crisis in Zaire started back in 1990, that new approach, interactive approach, has never really found ground in the academic world there. And here we are, we come with those simple exercises, and from the minute one, they realize that it's funny to play the role of a frustrated person, for example. If you have been put in in the bad side of on the bad part of the game, I have never had one complaint, and usually most of the time we were thanked, because I think they were a bit tired of conferences and seminars in which we were putting words on the crisis, on the problems, from a microphone just like that. And once again, we would see these white-collar, these foreigners or Congolese intellectuals coming and explaining at length the crisis with no possibility of interaction, of interacting. I think it has come as a novelty, and it's light, to the point that many of them come to me to ask me if they can use it for their own, even their families, because in their extended families, sometimes there is we very often mention that some of those exercises can be used anywhere in the private life as well, as much as in national issues.
Yes, it was a shame that I think the Europeans were kind of driven out of Africa, because I was over there for many years, and I noticed that the people were very, very concerned on a grassroots foundation. They were lovely people who treat their children and their families, something that we haven't learned, quite honestly. They live on nothing, but they've got that quality which I think we desire. And I think when we left the actual African continent, under duress, under the fact that we were robbing them, that wasn't true. We never robbed them at all. We gave a lot. We gave them roads, we gave them railways, we gave them education. Even some of their education is still being treated as the Europeans did. The way they teach one another, the way they convey knowledge to their people about one day they'll come back and help us. One day the whites will come back and help them. The top never doesn't want to hear it, not interested in that. They can do their thing. So we have someone like Mugabe, who is one of the most ruthless men that I've ever seen. In fact, I left Africa because of him. I wasn't going to stay with a person like that, treating his so-called children. And he was educated in Oxford University, would you believe? It's incredible. Here he was, who had all the knowledge that we had, and a little bit of power went to his head, and he became a monster. So I think the opportunity in Africa for us to go back in a different way than armed men. You mustn't go back with an army, I don't think. That's not the answer. We went before like that. If we can go back with the integrity of understanding that these people need help and need it in the most basic way, without any handouts. This idea of giving people charity. They don't want charity. Would you want charity? Someone come to your home and gave you charity and said, look, you need this money. And just walk away and think, oh, it's okay, he's got charity. No, you wouldn't. You'd be most angry. But if we could go back and give them like you've been doing, talking to those at the top, but making certain that the people at the bottom also get a little bit of you. They want to see you. They may not understand you, but to see that you're there to help, I think it'd be wonderful. I'm grateful for your service over there. God bless you.
Want to say?
Thank you for. I think also there are new realities also happening when we see Angola taking ownership of more and more parts of the private sector and even the public sector of Portugal. It's as if Angola was now coming to the rescue of Portugal to a very large extent, Brazil as well, of course, but it's a kind of ironical reversal of realities, and which I think makes the conversation between the actors of whichever continent, regardless of the continent, the conversation is easier because you have a PhD Namibian who can train young European and vice versa, and the Chinese. It seems to me this is what I meant by the generational insecurity. Sometimes I think we are witnessing new trends, which to me are fulfilling, are very promising in the sense that they put to the fore human intelligence, emotional intelligence, and probably this is the right way forward.
Thank you for your presentation. I think it was, it really brought to us the issues that we all have to face, and particularly the Congolese. My question is, do you see a simulation as being a method of transitional justice that could be used in different ways at different levels of society and between different ethnic groups, where there are breaches and an inability to talk with one another or trust one another, and recognizing that, still trying to cross a bridge?
Many thanks, Madam. Actually, I'm sure we will have plenty of occasions to discuss that with Alain, who was actually the facilitator during one of those workshops in which we brought together actors of North Kivu who had been separated by mountains of violence and hatred, actually. One of the two characters that Alain helped talk to each and listen, more than talk, listen to each other, was at that time the head of the security services in North Kivu, which just only tells you a bit of the type of violence that he had been either witnessing or even instructed to happen. So, and in front of him was a lady who had seen him as an adolescent, as a teenager, long time before, and she said, you've changed a lot since the time I knew you when you were a kid, and since you have now that you have become a monster. So that that's exactly the word that she told him in a quiet voice in front of him, and Alain had to manage that situation. Not that a miracle took place, but it's funny to say that we had a follow-up session. I'm just taking that example, a follow-up session 3 months later, and she explained that she was with her husband walking in the street, and her husband says, "Look, there is Albert. Albert is on the same side of the road. Let's move to the other side." Talking about that guy that he thought both of them would never want to see, nor even. And she said, "My husband was so surprised to see me leaving him and running to Albert to salute him, because we had met during those workshops." Of course, these are, I should not even mention that because it's so anecdotal. But there's at least one thing. I don't know any Congolese who ideally or who could would not be invitable in our workshop, except war criminals, of course. People like Bosco, we will never invite them. But we had criminals in our workshops, definitely, especially in the aftermath of wars. We thought it was better not to look too much into their personal files and have them there rather than outside of the discussion. Not dreaming that we would transform them, but at least that we would circumscribe their level of violence and their level of, we would widen their level of understanding of who they are and where they are, and how, to what extent can they pretend that they protect their communities. Usually this is the way we try to address the problem.
Other question? Yes, please. I was wondering, maybe there's one thing you may want to explain is that after the time for simulation, there's also the time to have discussions on the problems, and I don't know if you want to say that there are 2 parts in any of the workshop.
Oh, thank you. Just to say that, I was mentioning these 3 steps. Identify the key leaders, spoilers, or good actors, inviting them, and then engaging them. So engaging them in two stages. We start with those simulations, we bring them into another universe. And I did mention the fact that it's first name only, the badges. So if the governor is there, there will only be his first name, and it's very important to break the usual barriers. But then once hopefully we have reached a new stage of capacity to listen to each other, especially the listening capacity, then we ask them, we haven't prepared any thematic issue. We didn't decide on your behalf. The only thing we've decided on your behalf, we have really imposed in this room is our techniques and the expression initiative for cohesive leadership. That's the only thing we impose. The rest is you have to identify what are your burning issues in the country or in the region or in your sector. And this is very much appreciated, because usually what is said about, especially NGOs led by a foreigner like me, there's an agenda, everything is already set. No, nothing is set. The only thing which is set, it's set in a very transparent way. It's the title of our initiative. So usually what comes out from, and we pick up on the screen whatever is said by the entirety of the group. No one is treated differently from another. So we put on the screen what they see as the burning issues, and then we summarize that. And usually what comes out is insecurity, lack of state, difficulty to live together, and of course the social and economic problems, which are a bit less interesting because they are consequences of the rest. So this is when we ask them then to go in small groups and come back and engage, make commitments at the end. So for example, the last one we made with the false interview between the head of state and the delegation, it ended up with a letter. They decided to write a letter to the head of state, which to me is the best we can achieve in this type of initiative, because they have identified who could take such a decision, and they have the collective courage to craft a letter in which they put all their collective intelligence, their knowledge of the guy, of the head of state, to know how he would receive such and such comments or demand.
Really, last question, because I see 6:27.
Ibrahim from Guinea-Conakry. I've been reading about Tutsi in Congo. I was just wondering who they are, and in your opinion, why are they marginalized? Do you think they are marginalized? And what are their role in the conflict in Congo?
Wow, that's okay. I'll try to be as clear as I can. Tutsi in the Congo, 200 years presence in some areas in high hills of South Kivu, the Banyamulenge. Those who have the word Banyamulenge is recent, but their presence goes back to two centuries. Just like in Guinea-Conakry, I'm sure they were heading, livestock and herds of cows and cattle. Further north, there were also populations of Hutu and Tutsi in North Kivu, in what is today North Kivu. So three categories. In North Katanga, there were those who we call the Bavira, who were also having livestock. Then in the 1930s, the Belgian, under the Belgian rule, it was considered that there was a need of manpower for agriculture in the Kivu and for the mining industry down there in Katanga. And so thousands of them were transplanted. That the word was invented, I think, for that matter. They were received in the villages, and informal agreements were taken. Customary agreements were made between the new arrivals and the traditional chiefs, without the knowledge of or the interference of the colonial rule. It was, as we would say, between us. You know, you arrive here, we can see that you didn't arrive by yourself, you were forced to come here. You will pay your duty, you can work that piece of land, and life would go on. After the independence, probably, I will be as short as I can, but probably a couple of things happened. Some of these, some of these traditional chiefs who used to receive duties from those families didn't realize the importance of education because they were kings. You know, the Houndé kingdom, the Houndé, the Nandé, the Nyanga were seeing themselves as traditional chiefs who perhaps didn't need that level of education. Some thought there was a need for that, some didn't. In the meantime, Hutu and Tutsi parents who were in a kind of second stage of citizenship, they were called Rwandans, they sent their kids to school. And little by little, they started to get a higher income and to get faster. In 1990, collectively, the Rwandophone Hutu and Tutsi community in North Kivu and South Kivu claimed for the right to purchase land, the very land that they had been working on, and to be candidates for the elections, because multi-party was starting and they wanted these two signs of full citizenship. What ensued was a war called the War of Masisi in '93, a very violent war. There had been a war already in the 60s, but that one was a really defining one. Because it was about, are they full citizens or not? And then arrived the Burundian crisis and the Rwandan crisis, and we are now faced with that. The Tutsi, of course, went more into the military sector, listened to officers of FPR who were still based in Uganda and who said, help us, your forefathers were born in Rwanda, help us re-establish ourselves in Rwanda. We have been expelled there back in '59. The head of state, the Habyarimana, says that there's no place for us, help us re-establish ourselves. And this is how they got those connections with the Rwandan crisis and the Rwandan regime also, while still feeling very Congolese. So I would say here we are now with the challenge of these Tutsi Congolese not feeling protected by a national army, the rest of the country feeling insecure because of the efficiency that those, especially that category, for the sake of self-protection, has acquired. And here we are with the challenge of bringing the worries, the concern of the Tutsi and the Hutu and the non-Rwandophone together within a newly integrated army that would represent all the facets of the society. We are very far from that. It's the challenge. Nobody talks about it very much in Kinshasa because they see the M23 as if the Tutsi were the fifth column in Congo. It's very complex. Rwanda has its own calculations because they have their enemies inside Congo. Sometimes they help that community. By helping them, they expose them to being more ostracized by the rest of the Congolese population. So this is why what I meant when I said that secondary actors, those neighbors, sometimes they have to exert self-restraint.
Thank you so much, Michel, for this wonderful